She canceled our wedding for the third time. Same excuse, same soft voice telling me she needed space. And like a fool, I bought it again. I told myself Sarah was just overwhelmed, that maybe the timing wasn't right, that love was enough to carry us through. But deep down, a cold suspicion had already begun to take root. My name is Michael Turner. I'm 39 years old, a financial consultant in Denver. I've built my life on structure, numbers, and patterns. For the past 4 years, Sarah had been the one unpredictable variable in my otherwise steady world. We met at a charity gala, sparks flew fast, and before I knew it, I was planning a future that revolved around her. Engagement ring, new house, even a joint savings account. All the moves of a man who thought he'd finally found the one. The first time she postponed the wedding, I told myself it was nerves. The second time, I told myself it was stress from her job. But the third time, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. She stood in our living room, twisting the ring on her finger, and said the words I'd come to dread. I just need some space. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I nodded, as though I understood, and watched her walk out the door. On the surface, I stayed calm. But inside, something hardened. This wasn't just hesitation. This was a pattern, and patterns always have causes. That night, I sat at my desk with a notebook. I wrote 3 words: freeze, track, respond. That's how I handle problems at work, and it was how I was going to handle this. Freeze meant no confrontation, no explosion of anger that would tip her off. Track meant observation, collecting details, connecting dots. Respond meant action when the truth was undeniable. The truth came faster than I expected. A week later, while Sarah claimed she was spending time with her sister, I noticed something strange. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and the preview of a text flashed across the screen. A man's name I didn't recognize. Words that didn't belong in a conversation between friends. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't ask questions. I simply made a note of the number and began my quiet work. Within hours, I had the man's name. David Collins. Married. 2 children. A mid-level executive at a firm downtown. My fiancée wasn't overwhelmed or scared of commitment. She wasn't needing space. She was already filling it with another man's life. The discovery didn't make me explode. It made me colder. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the evidence on my screen, and felt something click into place. This wasn't heartbreak. This was strategy. Sarah thought she could play both sides forever. But she had forgotten who she was dealing with. I don't raise my voice. I don't make empty threats. I build cases. I prepare moves. And when the time comes, I execute with precision. What I did next, Sarah and David would never forget. After I saw David's name on Sarah's phone, I didn't confront her. I didn't storm into the living room and demand answers. I simply closed the notebook on my desk and wrote 1 word beneath the first 3, evidence. At work, I spend my life in numbers. Numbers don't lie, and neither do patterns. Sarah's excuses had followed the same script each time. Her voice soft, her eyes downcast, her hands nervously spinning the ring. I just need space, Michael. I used to accept that at face value. Not anymore. Now I wanted proof, hard proof, that every postponed wedding wasn't about nerves. It was about David. The first thing I did was verify his background. I dug into public records, business directories, even his social media. Married for 12 years, 2 kids in grade school, a wife named Rebecca. His firm was only 10 minutes from Sarah's office. Convenient. Almost too convenient. The puzzle pieces started fitting together. The second thing I did was track Sarah's movements. Quietly, without confrontation. I already knew her patterns. Tuesday evenings were yoga. Thursday nights were wine with coworkers. I didn't follow her in person. That would have been sloppy, obvious. Instead, I checked the credit card statements tied to our joint account. Small charges that told bigger stories. A hotel bar on a Tuesday night. Dinner at a steakhouse she'd never mentioned. Rideshare pickups nowhere near her sister's place. Every detail went into my notebook. Dates, times, amounts. No accusations, no raised voice. Just cold, quiet record keeping. 2 weeks later, I caught the final confirmation. Sarah left her laptop open one evening while she took a shower. I didn't snoop through messages or personal files. I didn't need to. Her calendar was enough. Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Dinner at the dockside. A reservation for 2, not under her name, but under Collins. I closed the laptop before she came back. She never knew I saw it. That night, she came into the living room, hair damp, dressed in sweatpants, and curled up on the couch beside me. She leaned against my shoulder, like nothing in the world was wrong, like we weren't engaged in two completely different lives. I didn't flinch. I didn't push her away. I kept my silence. But inside, I felt the shift. I wasn't the betrayed fiancé anymore. I was the quiet strategist, already 3 moves ahead. She thought she was in control, balancing me with David, playing both sides. What she didn't realize was that the game had already changed. I didn't need to argue with Sarah. I didn't need her confession. I had evidence, more than enough. And once I had enough of it, I knew exactly how to use it. For now, I waited. Waiting is power. Sarah believed she was keeping secrets. What she didn't know was that her secrets were already mine. The following week, I shifted from observation to leverage. Knowing was one thing. Having control was another. I already had enough evidence to confirm what Sarah had been doing, but I wanted more than proof. I wanted power. At work, when I review financial audits, I never stop at the first irregularity. One mistake can be explained away. A pattern, though, that's where the truth lives. And Sarah's life had patterns everywhere. She was careless with her lies because she assumed my trust was unshakable. She'd underestimated me. I began cataloging her excuses alongside the receipts, text notifications, and calendar entries. Thursday night, wine with coworkers matched perfectly with a hotel charge 2 miles from David's firm. Saturday, helping her sister with the kids, matched with rideshare trips to neighborhoods she had no reason to be in. Every excuse paired with a piece of evidence that told the real story. At the same time, I looked closer at David Collins, a married man living in the suburbs, wife and kids at home. His social media was curated and professional, family photos, business accolades, vacations to Florida. But he wasn't nearly as careful offline. A public records search showed his house, his mortgage, even property tax filings. He had everything to lose, and he was gambling it on my fiancée. I printed some of the records, tucked them into a folder, and locked it away. I didn't plan to use them yet, but just knowing they existed was enough. Quiet leverage. If David thought his secret was safe, he was wrong. If Sarah thought her betrayal was invisible, she was blind. One evening, Sarah came home late. She looked tired but strangely happy, the kind of glow you don't get from working late at the office. She set her bag down, kissed me lightly, and went straight to the shower. I sat in the living room, flipping through her words in my head. I need space. Space, as it turned out, meant hotel rooms and quiet dinners under another man's name. I didn't say anything when she came back. I didn't accuse, didn't confront. Instead, I handed her a glass of wine and asked about her day. She smiled, relaxed, thinking she still had control. But the truth was already tilting. Every word she spoke only confirmed how far she'd gone. Later that night, when she was asleep, I updated my notebook. Added receipts, times, locations. Added David's name again and again. The picture was complete now. She wasn't just hesitant about marriage. She was living a double life. I didn't feel heartbreak anymore. I felt calculation. The kind of cold focus that comes when you know the outcome before anyone else can see it. Sarah thought she was keeping me in the dark. David thought his wife would never find out. Both of them were wrong. I wasn't planning revenge in the loud, reckless way most men do. I was building something stronger. A silent plan. A clean exit. A move they would never see coming until it was already done. Once I had enough evidence to confirm Sarah's affair, I shifted from collecting to testing. I wanted to know not just what she was doing, but how far it had gone. Affairs like this don't stay casual for long. They either collapse quickly, or they dig in deep. And I needed to know which one hers was. On a Thursday evening, she told me she had a late client meeting. Her tone was casual, rehearsed. She kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door like she'd done it 100 times. I didn't follow her physically. I didn't need to. Instead, I checked the joint account later that night. Sure enough, a charge appeared at a restaurant near the river. Not a client dinner. Not even close. I wrote it down, matching it against the calendar entry I already knew she'd created under the name Collins. That was the test, and she'd failed it without hesitation. I started laying quiet traps, little inconsistencies she wouldn't notice until it was too late. One night, I asked if she wanted me to drive her to yoga, pretending I had errands nearby. She declined immediately, almost too quickly, insisting she'd rather go alone. Another evening, I mentioned running into her sister at the grocery store, casually noting that she'd said nothing about Sarah visiting. Sarah's face tightened, only for a second, but it was enough. She mumbled something about miscommunication and hurried to change the subject. Every test confirmed what I already knew. Meanwhile, I was building the other side of the equation, David. He thought he was untouchable, living his two lives without consequence. But I knew where he lived, who his wife was, and where his children went to school. I wasn't reckless enough to confront him, but I didn't need to. Just knowing his reality gave me leverage. Men like him collapse when their double life is exposed. His weakness wasn't passion. It was reputation. And reputation is fragile. At night, I studied both of them like case files. Sarah's patterns of deceit, David's movements, their overlapping alibis. It was like building a financial model, inputs, outputs, variables. Eventually, the numbers tell you the truth. And the truth was simple. They were too entangled to stop themselves. It wasn't just an affair. It was a second life. I didn't sleep much during those weeks, but I wasn't restless. I was focused. Every detail I logged brought me closer to clarity. And clarity is power. One evening, Sarah came home later than usual. She looked at me carefully, maybe searching for a sign of suspicion. I smiled, poured her a glass of wine, and asked about her day. She relaxed almost instantly. She still thought I was blind. But I wasn't blind. I was watching, listening, recording. Quietly building the kind of case that doesn't just end an engagement, it ends illusions. Sarah thought she was in control. David thought he was safe. They were both wrong. By the 5th week, my notebook was filled cover to cover. Dates, receipts, credit card charges, calendar entries, even screenshots of public records tied to David. The picture wasn't just complete, it was undeniable. Sarah wasn't postponing our wedding because of nerves. She was living in two worlds, and she thought I was too trusting to notice. That was the moment I shifted from collecting to executing. I started with something small, something that would plant the first seed of doubt. One evening, while Sarah was in the shower, I left a business card on the kitchen counter. Not mine, not a friend's. It was a card from a private investigator I'd met once at a networking event. I knew Sarah would see it. I knew she'd wonder. Sure enough, the next day she was quieter, more reserved. She watched me closely as we ate dinner, like she was searching my face for signs of what I knew. I gave her nothing, just calm silence. The card had done its work. She was nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. The second move was financial. I had access to our joint savings account, the one we'd opened to plan the wedding that never seemed to happen. Quietly, without announcing anything, I began shifting my contributions to a private account under my name only. I didn't touch her money. I didn't need to. I just stopped letting mine bleed into a future that was never going to exist. She didn't notice right away, but she would. And when she did, she'd know something had changed. Meanwhile, I prepared the final report. A single folder, neatly organized, holding every piece of evidence I had collected. The affair wasn't speculation, it was documented. If Sarah thought she could deny it, she was already cornered. If David thought his wife would never know, I had everything necessary to shatter his illusion. I didn't deliver it yet. Timing mattered. Pressure builds best in silence. So I let Sarah move through her days, thinking she was still in control, while the weight of my quiet decisions gathered around her. One Friday night, she told me she needed to spend the weekend at her sister's. She packed a bag quickly, too quickly, and kissed me on the cheek before leaving. I watched her walk out the door without a word. I already knew she wasn't going to her sister's. My phone buzzed an hour later with an alert from the bank. Another dinner charge, this time at a hotel restaurant. Same pattern, same name on the reservation. I closed the alert, calm as ice. That was the confirmation I had been waiting for. Sarah thought she was moving freely, living her double life in the shadows. What she didn't realize was that every step she took was inside the trap I had built. The walls were closing in, and soon, silence would do the rest. The silence was doing its work. Sarah didn't realize it, but she was already unraveling. Small things gave it away. The way she double-checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, how her laughter with friends sounded hollow when she came home late. She was waiting for me to explode, to accuse, to start a fight she could twist into my fault. But the explosion never came. Only quiet. and quiet unsettled her more than rage ever could. I made subtle moves to increase the pressure. The first was financial distance. Our joint account, once filled with deposits for a wedding that never came, had begun to dry up. She noticed eventually. One night, she asked why I hadn't transferred my usual share. I told her calmly that I'd shifted my saving strategy. No argument. No explanation. Just a fact. She stared at me across the table, her fork frozen midair. I could see the panic flicker in her eyes. The second move was social. I stopped posting photos of us together. For years, she'd curated an online image of a perfect relationship. Happy selfies, anniversary dinners, engagement ring close-ups. I let that illusion collapse, one unposted week at a time. Her friends noticed. Comments slowed. The algorithm buried her carefully staged version of us. She felt it, and she hated it. Meanwhile, I focused on building my exit strategy. The evidence was all neatly cataloged, ready to be deployed. Screenshots of texts, hotel charges, GPS logs, overlapping excuses. And not just Sarah's mistakes, David's too. He wasn't just a married man cheating on his wife. He was reckless, leaving a trail of transactions and digital fingerprints that painted him as a man running two households. I had it all, but I didn't use it yet. Timing mattered. Pressure without release builds cracks. I wanted them both guessing, sweating, second-guessing their own moves. So I played the part of the calm fiancé, cooking dinner, going to work, smiling when appropriate. All while they tightened the noose themselves. One evening, Sarah came home unusually early. She hovered in the doorway, watching me scroll through my phone. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice too careful. I nodded without looking up. She hesitated, then tried again. "You've been quiet lately." I just smiled faintly. She was right, of course. Quiet. Very quiet. Later that night, she disappeared into the bathroom with her phone for almost an hour. When she emerged, her expression was strained. I knew she'd been messaging David, probably panicking about what I knew, what I didn't. That was exactly where I wanted her. Uncertain, restless, afraid of silence. David, on the other hand, was still oblivious. Men like him rarely see the storm until it's already on top of them. He thought his secrets were safe in dimly lit hotel restaurants and rushed weekend trips. He hadn't considered that I might be tracking him the same way I was tracking Sarah. The stage was set. I had the data, the patience, and the silence that unnerved them both. The only thing left was the strike. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be final. The first strike had to be subtle. Not a confrontation, not a screaming match, but a quiet reminder that secrets never stay buried. I started with David. A man with a wife and 2 children doesn't gamble unless he thinks the table is rigged in his favor. He thought Sarah was his secret, but secrets can be traced. I drafted a simple envelope. No return address. No handwriting to connect it back to me. Inside, one single page, a photo of him and Sarah walking into a hotel together, time-stamped, with the line, "Your wife deserves the truth." I didn't send it to his wife. Not yet. I sent it to him, delivered to his office by standard mail. Just enough to shake him. The timing was deliberate. I sent it on a Monday, knowing his week would begin under pressure. Men like David don't think clearly when they're afraid their perfect life is about to collapse. They scramble, they panic, they make mistakes. Meanwhile, with Sarah, the strike came differently. I left my notebook, one of the older ones, filled with notes, dates, and charges, open on my desk at home. Not the real one, not the complete record, just enough to hint at what I knew. I made sure to leave it where she'd see it while I showered. When I returned, the book was exactly where I left it, but the pages weren't lined up the way I'd left them. She had looked. She had read. That night, she was restless, pacing the kitchen, pretending to scroll on her phone. She asked about dinner, then asked if I was upset about work, then asked if I'd heard from my parents. Irrelevant questions, circling around what she really wanted to know. How much I had seen, how much I knew. I answered each question calmly, directly, but never gave her the relief of certainty. By Wednesday, the pressure was visible. Sarah started coming home earlier, trying harder to play the part of the loving fiancé. She cooked dinner twice that week, something she hadn't done in months. She laughed too loudly at small jokes, leaned against me on the couch with an affection that felt rehearsed. I didn't push her away. I let her act. Because the more she tried, the more obvious her fear became. Then came David's mistake. Thursday night, while Sarah claimed she was at yoga, I received an alert from my monitoring system. A new email account, hastily created, had sent her a message. The subject line was frantic. "We need to talk." Not safe. David was cracking. The envelope had worked. His perfect world wasn't so perfect anymore. I saved the email, added it to the folder, and closed my laptop. That night, Sarah came home looking exhausted. She hugged me longer than usual, her voice shaky as she asked, "Are you okay? You've been different lately." I just smiled faintly and said, "I'm fine." And that was it. No accusations. No demands. Just silence. Silence that told her everything and nothing at once. Silence that left her terrified. The trap was tightening, and neither of them could see the way out. By the 8th week, their panic was tangible. Sarah hovered around me like a shadow, overcompensating with affection, offering to cook, suggesting weekend getaways, trying to stitch together a fabric she had already torn apart. David, meanwhile, was spiraling. The email he'd sent to Sarah told me everything I needed to know. He was afraid. Afraid of exposure, afraid of his carefully constructed life collapsing. And fear makes men sloppy. It was time to escalate. Quietly, methodically, I drafted another envelope. This one wasn't for David. It was for his wife, Rebecca. Inside was a single page, copies of hotel receipts, dates, and times that matched Sarah's calendar entries. I didn't include photos, didn't need to. The numbers were enough. Numbers don't lie. But I didn't send it yet. Not immediately. I placed it in a drawer, ready, waiting for the right moment. At the same time, I tested Sarah again. One evening, I casually mentioned that I'd been thinking about moving the wedding fund into a higher yield account. I said it like an offhand financial decision, nothing more. Her face drained of color. She asked why, voice trembling slightly. I shrugged and told her it didn't make sense to leave so much money sitting untouched. She nodded too quickly, eyes darting away. She knew the future she was pretending to plan with me was already slipping. The silence between us grew louder. At night, she scrolled her phone in the bathroom. I knew she was messaging David, probably spinning lies, trying to soothe his panic while hiding her own. I didn't intervene. I let the silence press against her until she could barely breathe in it. Then came the perfect trigger. On a Friday afternoon, I received a bank alert. David had booked another hotel. This time, the reservation wasn't under his name. It was under hers. Sarah Turner, my fiancée, using my last name before she'd earned the right to it. That detail cut deeper than any lie she'd told. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was mockery. That night, when she claimed she was going to a co-worker's birthday, I simply nodded. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I watched her leave with a smile too forced to be real. Then I pulled the envelope from the drawer. This time, I didn't hesitate. I dropped it in the mail, addressed to Rebecca Collins. By Sunday, Sarah came home pale, restless, her phone buzzing nonstop. She sat across from me at dinner, forcing small talk, pushing food around her plate. I said nothing. I didn't ask. I let the silence hang heavy in the air until she nearly choked on it. Somewhere across town, Rebecca was reading that envelope. Somewhere, David was realizing his world was collapsing. And Sarah was sitting across from me, pretending everything was fine while knowing it wasn't. The quiet was closing in on all of them, and I hadn't raised my voice once. By Monday morning, the storm had broken. I didn't need to be in their house to know it. The signs arrived in silence, in the smallest details. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly that day, lighting up with messages she tried to hide, her face pale every time she glanced at the screen. She moved around the apartment like a ghost, nervous energy pouring out of her, unable to sit still. I knew why. Rebecca had opened the envelope. Wives don't ignore hotel receipts that match late nights and false alibis. David's world, the one he thought he had perfectly balanced, had collapsed in his own living room. That evening, Sarah tried to force dinner conversation, but her voice cracked halfway through. She pushed her plate away untouched and said she wasn't feeling well. I only nodded. Silence was my only response. Silence that told her I knew. Silence that made her question how much I knew. Silence that left her unraveling under the weight of her own guilt. 2 days later, the unraveling turned to chaos. I came home to find her sitting on the couch, mascara streaked, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. She looked at me with wide, desperate eyes. She didn't speak, waiting for me to ask, to demand, to give her an opening. I didn't. I set my keys on the counter, poured myself a drink, and sat across from her. The silence stretched until she broke it. She muttered that things were complicated, that she'd been confused, that she didn't mean for it to happen this way. But she never said his name. She couldn't, because saying his name would make it real, and she still wanted to pretend it wasn't. I didn't reply. Not one word. I let her drown in her own half-explanations. By Thursday, David had disappeared. His car wasn't at his office, his social media went silent, and from what my sources told me, he'd been staying at a hotel alone. Rebecca had thrown him out. His career was now dangling by a thread, his family shattered. All from one envelope, one carefully chosen move. Sarah, though, wasn't free from the collapse. She looked more frantic with each passing day. The makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her voice when she tried to act normal. She was unraveling under the quiet. That night, she asked directly if I still wanted to marry her. Her words came out fast, desperate, like she needed me to anchor her. I looked at her for a long time, not with anger, not with pity, just with the calm of someone who already knows the outcome. Then I stood, walked to my desk, and pulled out the folder I had built piece by piece. I placed it on the table between us and went back to my chair without a word. Her hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the pages, receipts, calendar entries, hotel bookings, screenshots. Every lie she had told, every night she thought she was safe, laid out in cold black and white. Her breathing quickened, tears brimming, mouth opening and closing without sound. She looked at me then, waiting for rage, waiting for a confrontation. But rage never came. Only silence. And silence was louder than anything I could have said. She sat frozen, staring at the folder I had placed in front of her. Every page was a mirror she didn't want to face, but couldn't look away from. Her hands shook as she turned each sheet, her lips trembling as she read the dates, the receipts, the quiet trail of betrayal she thought she had hidden. I watched her crumble in silence. No anger, no questions, no demands. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet, her face pale. She whispered my name, reaching for an explanation that wouldn't come. But there was nothing left to explain. She had already written the story herself, one careless lie at a time. I stood slowly, walked to the bedroom, and returned with a single envelope. Inside was my resignation from her life, canceled lease transfer forms, my bank statements showing the new account I had built, and a signed note that simply said, "The engagement is over." I placed it on top of the evidence folder. She reached for me, her voice breaking, begging me to talk, to shout, to do anything that would show I still cared. But I didn't give her that. Silence was my weapon, and silence was my answer. I picked up my packed bag, the one I had prepared weeks earlier when I knew this day would come. I walked to the door without looking back. She called my name again, louder now, her voice echoing off the walls of an apartment that no longer belonged to us. I closed the door behind me with the same calm I had carried through every step of this quiet war. Outside, the night air was cold, but clear. For the first time in months, I felt free. Not victorious, not vengeful, just free. I didn't need to ruin her further. I didn't need to send the evidence to her family or blast her lies across social media. Her world was already in ruins. David's marriage was shattered, his career in jeopardy. Sarah was left alone, her double life exposed. I had nothing left to take from them. As I walked down the empty street, I thought back to the moment she postponed our wedding for the third time, her soft voice saying she needed space. She had taken her space. She had filled it with another man's lies. And I had taken mine, silence, precision, control. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg for answers. I didn't give her the satisfaction of drama. I just ended it. Clean. Cold. Final. Some men burn everything down in anger. I didn't need to. I let the truth do the burning. And when it was done, I walked away, carrying only my silence. The quiet wasn't emptiness. It was strength. And it was all I needed. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.